What up, brothers and sisters? It's your brother G World 7_D. I want today to talk about, give you this information, another source regarding the Yamasse Indians. Okay, the Yamasse Indians from Florida to South Carolina. And this is a book by Denise L. Bossy, and this is a good book. This is another source regarding our history, and there's some things I disagree with, but this is just still some good information or source that we can have. I continue to hear some ignorant brothers and sisters deny the fact that the original people in America were black. The original Indians were black, period. All right, they were not Asians. They came much later. When the blacks were over here, the Asians didn't even exist. Those Asians basically are a mixture of albinoid whites, Australoid blacks, and we should call those Khoisan blacks, because those features come from them first. Those are people from Central and Southern Africa. All right, the original people in the Americas, Asia, Europe was so-called black people. That shouldn't even be. That's not enough for debate. All right, but you still get certain Pan-Africans out of their ignorance, and they keep talking about DNA, not knowing how silly they sound. And all you gotta do is look at the writings from people who came in the 1700s, the 1600s, and the drawings that they had of the people here. They unquestionably were black, either woolly hair, waved to straight hair. I don't know why we still even having this debate, but this is some self-hating Negro stuff while I was being indoctrinated from white racism. And this is really sad and it's sick. But some of my people never learn. Okay, here we go with this book this book costs around $70, I think, but it might be cheaper now. The Yamasse Indians from Florida to South Carolina. All right, we're going to go to page 55. Okay. Yamasse migrations into the Mocama and the Timucua missions provinces of Florida, 1667 through 1683. All right, let me try to get a click. I'm just going to probably just straight up read it. Around 1667, less than a decade after the emerging coalescence along the northern periphery of Spanish La Florida, I mentioned that before, Spanish La Florida, several refugee communities retreated into Guale and Mocama missions provinces under the mounting attacks of Shikimico, Indian slave raiders. Shikimico Indian slave raiders. Now, okay, I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna give my speech later on. Spanish officials allowed these immigrant Yamasse to settle at abandoned missions Doctrina and Vista location on the Atlantic coastal barrier islands. In present-day Florida, they initially reoccupied settlements formerly inhabited by Mocama and Amelia Island, and by 1679 also had repopulated Timucua missions along the middle St. Johns River, north and Cape, and south Mayaka of Lake George. No Yamasse settlement appeared in the St. Augustine vicinity during this initial wave of refugees into Spanish Florida, La Florida. Though not missionized at this time, the Yamasse were expected to provide tribute and labors to local chiefs and Spanish colony, respectively. By 1683, most of these towns were again empty as the Yamasses evacuated Florida and fled north to Carolina. I'm going to skip on further. This one right here says, Yamasse origins and first occupation of Florida. The Yamasses are Native American group. I don't use the term Native American, I say Aboriginal. Some people have turned with the Aboriginal term. Say they're indigenous. And technically, none of our people call them. None of them use them terms. They use their particular tribal names, but fine. The Yamasses are a Native American group not often identified with Florida. In part, I suspect this is because the Yamasse occupation there were brief, episodic, localized, and restricted to late 17th and 18th centuries. Moreover, their identity has been often blanketed beneath a mission Indian cover or falsely equated or combined with that of the Guale Indians. Okay, those are actually the Gullahs, but fine. But this veil is being lifted by recent scholarship, revealing a lengthier and more widespread Yamasse presence in Florida. Entanglements in European rivalries in interconnecting slave raids that range across the lower southeast frame Yamasse history. A willingness to moor long distances and shift European alliances enable them to adapt to their turbulent surroundings. As a result, a tradition of resistance was forged among a growing amalgam of interior and coastal native refugees whose collective identity as Yamasses was eventually born out of devastating circumstances wrought by European colonization. 150 years before the term Yamasses appeared in Spanish letters, dating to 1663, Andean groups were apparently living in villages and farmsteads associated with Mississippian chiefdoms of Tamaha, Okute, and Ichist along the Oconee and Ocmulgee River drainage of the interior Georgia Piedmont. Like this, Ocmulgee, like I said, Geechee. By the early 17th century, mound building had ceased and the interior river valleys were undergoing demographic collapse. What remained of a once densely populated region were scattered remnants of disease-damaged chiefdoms that by the mid-17th century became easy targets for roving Chickamauga slave raiders outfitted by Virginia traders. These are black people. These are the black tribes enslaving other black tribes, man. It started here in Americas. I already showed you before that Yamassees were black, and other groups in the southeast were black, in the Midwest, in the Northeast, hell, even out the West, and Northwest. Originally, all the people in Americas were black. This slave stuff started here in Americas, man. When the hell are people gonna start doing their research? Here, I'm gonna go further. Rather than succumb to these increasing attacks, Piedmont groups fled their ancestral homeland between 1659 and 1663. Around this time, Spanish documents reported Yamasses living in at least 5 settlements, 6, 8, 4, 3, 2, and more days distant by road from these provinces. Of Escamacu and Guali along the Atlantic coast. Current evidence suggests a location island from the mouth of the Savannah River between the Guale missions provinces and the Chimico villages along the middle Savannah River. These refugees communities, which apparently possess ancestral towns' names but bore little resemblance to their chieftain progenitors, came to form the core of an ever-expanding melange of native groups, eventually known to Europeans as Yamasse. The South Carolina-Georgia border, however, proved only a temporary haven for the fledgling Yamasse towns. By 1667, a new round of attacks by Chimico slavers forced them south into the coastal mission provinces of Guale and Mocama, where they concentrated their communities on St. Simons Islands, Georgia, and Amelia Island, Florida, respectively. Town leaders gained settlement lands and refugee status through a formal request to the colonial Spanish governor and the verbal consent of the appropriate provincial chief. Yamasse arrived, filled several empty mission town sites, bolstered the rapidly dwindling coastal mission Indian population, and provided a new pool of laborers and warriors for the Guale and the Mocama provinces. Though these people were not subject to direct missionarization, friars appeared confident that refugees and migrants would someday heed the calling of the Lord through interactions with nearby Christian Indians. But their optimism would be dashed as the number of Christianity-resisting Yamasse continued to grow throughout their nearly 2-decade-long tenure in Spanish Florida. These brothers and sisters were fighters. All right, to ensure Spanish protection from the Carolina colony and the Indian allies, Yamasse men contributed to the yearly mission labor draft, often being the leading supplier of workers from the northern mission provinces during their first decade in Spanish Florida. However, documented complaints about absentee and runaway Yamasse laborers in St. Augustine suggest that the immigrants' support may not always have lived up to Spanish expectations. Moreover, the second half of the 17th century witnessed a loosened Spanish strategy towards a native labor, whereby officials attempted to recruit or entice Indian cooperation through payment of some form. Other than rendering obedience to Spanish crown, the labor draft was the only official requirement of the Yamasse because, as pagans, they were not to work in the mission fields. I hate that term. Okay, but Yamasse tribute to mission chiefs was deemed voluntarily, although non-compliance or at least an unwillingness to contribute led to cases of friction between Christian leaders and more traditional communities situated in their territories. In one instance, the Cacique of San Juan del Puerto in 1681 demanded payment for Yamasse on Amelia Island in the form of bear fat, deer skin, acorns, and palmetto berries. But the governor intervened and emptied the island's Yamasses, who were to be protected and treated with charity. The indigenous Mocama occupied 4 mission settlements along the Atlantic coast in the decades prior to Yamasse's incursions into La Florida. From north to south, these were the San Buenaventura, San Buenaventura de Guadalucuna at the south end of St. Simon's Islands and San Pedro de Mocama on Cumberland Island in Georgia, and Santa Maria de Sena on Amelia Island, and San Juan del Puerto on Fort George Island in Florida. Around each friar-occupied mission communities was a small outlying cluster of native villages or vistas that fell under the spiritual guidance of the neighboring mission friars. In time, continued population loss within the mission provinces due to the epidemic and immigration led the Spanish to coordinate the relocation of vistas communities to nearby doctrinas, a process known as congregation, the former combining of mission settlements among the Mocama began around 1655, with the transfer of the entire San Pedro population to Santa Maria, and they all moved to San Juan in 1665. Therefore, at the dawn, the Yamasses arrived in the Mocama provinces. Only the region's northernmost and the southernmost missions were still in existence. The relocation of 4 Yamasse towns to Amelia Island, Santa Maria, in 1667 helped partly fill a gap in the Mocama mission chain. Placed at the northern end of the island was an unnamed Yamasse town, followed by Okatuku, 1 league to the south, Latema, another 2 leagues to the south, and Santa Maria, 1/2 league further south. 2 more Yamasse settlements relocated to Mocama provinces in 1680. One community took over the former mission of San Pedro de Mocama, and the other settled to the north, both on the Cumberland Island. In 1675, the 4 towns of Amelia Island had a total population of 190, with each town possessing between 40 and 60 residents. In 1678, the Caciques and leading men and heirs of the island's Yamasse's community convened for an official visitation of Antonio de Arguelles in the council halls of Santa Maria. Appointed by the governor of Spanish Florida, Arguelles visited the mission of the Gole in the Mocama provinces to gather demographic information and intelligence on the current state of affairs within these Spanish allied settlements. All right, I'll go further over because I want to emphasize something even more. Okay, here it is right here. All right, it is right here. 1 second, and here's another one. By 1663, many Yamassees were on the move again, as their settlements throughout Florida were abandoned amid turmoil brought on by French pirate raids and English-sponsored slave-catching expeditions. I repeat, by 1683, many Yamassees were on the move again, as their settlements throughout Florida were abandoned and turmoil brought on by the French pirate raids and English-sponsored slave-catching expeditions. In addition to these external circumstances, internal factions apparently were at play. As Yamassee's numbers increased, their participation in the labor draft appeared to wane, even as threats of several punishments were issued for non-compliance. By 1695, a Christian Yamasse named Santiago, who resided at the Guale mission of Santa Maria on Amelia Island and claimed to be the last of his people living on the Mocama province, wrote of the abuses inflicted on him at the hands of Spanish soldiers and implied that such treatment may have been why many Yamassees had earlier all gone to the English. These factors seem to have fostered a growing dissatisfaction amongst the Yamassees with the Spanish governors of La Florida. Yamassee's destination this time was the Port Royal region of South Carolina, where they hoped a change in colonial allegiance would inspire protection and an upper hand in trade relations with the fledgling Carolina colony. The deflection was massive and widespreading, affecting Yamassees in the provinces of Guale, Mocama, and Appalachia, as towns evacuated Spanish Florida in waves between 1683 and 1685. The Mayaka and the Anacape missions survived into the first decade of the 18th century, although it is unclear if Yamassees were part of these missions following the exodus of Florida by their coastal dwelling counterparts. Did these living along the St. Johns River choose to leave with their brethren, or did they stay in the lake and marsh-dominated environs of Middle St. John's? John Hands suggests that some, if not all, of the 104 non-Mayaka recorded on the 1692 census for Salvador de Mayaka were Yamasse, but concedes that this is not known for certain. For 3 decades, the Yamasse Confederation in South Carolina grew, as Upper and Lower Yamasse towns became staunch English allies. By 1750, however, relations between the two had turned sour, and the Yamasse undertook a second retreat deep into La Florida, where they would establish themselves in or near mission communities around St. Augustine and in Spanish West Florida. Ironically, these are the same natives who over the past 2 decades had played prominent roles in the destruction of the Florida missions. All right, we'll go on a little further. Among the first Yamasse phase in Florida, what can we glean from the Spanish documents about the Yamasse during their first phase of occupation in Florida? First, the Yamasse was not a unified social ethnic group at the time. Instead, they were a decentralized series of towns derived from separate pre-contact chiefdoms. Some of these communities appeared to have carried their ancestral names with them, including Tamaya, La Tama, and Okotuki, possibly Okute. Moreover, documents indicated that the Chisi's were living adjacent to San Felipe on northern Cumberland Island in 1681. Early on, only a small number of immigrant towns in the Mission provinces bore a Yamasse cultural affiliation in Spanish documents, while others frequently carried the generic label of pagan or infidels. In time, Yamassees became the term of convenience by which Spanish and English officials referred to them as collective whole. When a small handful of ethnically varied refugee communities first received admittance into Spanish Florida into the late 1660s, their population number only in the hundreds. Based on the Pedro de Arcos population figures of 1675, these groups accounted for about 700 natives inhabiting the provinces of Guale, Mocama, and Appalachia. This same census outlined an immigrant population that outnumbered baptized Indians in the Atlantic coastal provinces. a total number less than 1,000 pales in comparison to the counts given by the Scottish settlers and Indian traders. The total number less than 1,000 pales in comparison to counts given by the Scottish settlers and Indian traders residing in Stuart Town, Carolina, which in 1685 reported 1,000 or more Yamassees are coming down daily. The context of this comment clearly illuminates the multi-ethnic composition of the term Yamasse by this time, also including Lower Creeks, Wooley defectors, and other figurative mission Indians. Thus, during their first Florida phase of occupation, the Yamassees were neither geographically consolidated or ethnically exclusive. While the colonial settling of the southeast weakened havoc on the indigenous population, it has also created a context for the genesis of new ethnic groups through the synchronism of formerly distinct entities, a blending of ethnically different people against a backdrop fraught with sweeping social, political, and epidemiological uncertainties eventually gave birth to the Yamasse identity. This process of ethnogenesis resulted in an eventual conscious recognition by insiders and outsiders of a new cultural ethnic group identity different from its ancestral roots. In other words, the cultures did not just blend but actively forge a new identity and develop new practices. In the Southeast, while migrant and remnant groups did in time cultivate a self-identified Yamasse tribal identity, this recognized transformation had yet to crystallize prior to their departure from Spanish Florida for English Carolina in the early 1680s. All right, I'm going to read a little bit longer. Spanish documents are rather mute with respect to early Yamasse social political organizations. Political affiliation and loyalty of the La Florida refugees appear tethered first to their town, was severed as a primary source of identity. Early towns may have been somewhat homogeneous in internal composition, but combining their heterogeneous and consistent of remarkable variety of diverse aboriginal towns. Political economic decisions arose at the town level, and council houses were titular chiefs apparently held positions subordinate to the councils or other collective forms of leadership and wielded little authority over lands or vessels. This is evident in one of the few documentary references to Yamasse politics in which the Cat Q at Santa Maria during a 1678 visitation to Amelia Island stated that his vessels did not obey him and that for this reason he was resigning from the chieftainship. Though open to interpretation, this statement intimates that Spanish officials imposed the term Cat Q on Yamasse town leaders for diplomatic purposes, meaning that individuals actually held minimum political authority in their communities. Similarly, so-called chiefs at the Anacape and the Mayaca seem to have had little control over their fellow villagers. Excuse me. Okay. Now I've read all that, and it's basically talking about the Yamasse's presence in the Carolina area in Florida and what they were dealing with. This information is all in this book, The Yamasse Indians from Florida, South Carolina. It's a very good book, and it cost me around $70. I think close to $70. But you have to pay that much if you want to get good, very good, solid information, good sources. I'm giving you this source, and it has a little map of the area on the front of the book, talking about the Yamasse and showing the Yamasse in the land that they cover. They cover more of that. Some terminology I did not like. I don't like the term Native American because they weren't no quote Native American. White folks can be a Native American. All right, these Asians can be a Native American. But I just read certain details of what was going on and how the original slave raiding happened amongst many tribal groups fighting with each other here in the Americas, and they was raiding and then using those tribal groups, using those individuals, and then working with Europeans. So our people understand that yes, you had that in Africa, but that stuff started here in America where slave raiding was happening, and then tribal chiefs and kings were working, like I just said, with Europeans to attack other groups. And they was doing that for greed, to obtain. Some of them obtain little guns and other little trinkets, but also they want to obtain the lands and obtain power over regions that they did not have. So this is something that I want to talk about, and I got some more stuff I want to talk about, but I want to talk about the Yamasse Indians today. Um, but this is a good book. It's a good source. I'm gonna show you a book again. It costs around $70. His book costs around $70, man. This is hardback. You may get it cheaper if you can find a paperback, but this is hardback. But this talks about the Yamasse Indians and what they were dealing with when the Spanish and the English came here. So it's a very good book. Like I said, it's worth $70, but you should look into it and get it. All right, I didn't read everything that I wanted to read because I started getting a little tired. I need to drink my water. I finished exercising, man, and I want to start slurring and everything. And I apologize something if I mispronounce certain tribal groups. I try to be as exact as I can, but I apologize for that. Yeah, I apologize for that. But my goal is to get you this information. Now, I've been studying stuff for years, but it's not really easy. I mean, it's easy to the point when you start knowing this stuff, some of the stuff just click to you like this with a snap of your finger. But if you do not know this information and you are just slowly getting exposed to it, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for even a good researcher, but you got to put the time and effort and the money to research this stuff. But trust me, you can pay less for Jordans and some little fancy outfit and buy more on books and documentation, printing periodical articles, magazines, and journals, buying that stuff instead of spending your money on fancy ass cars. As soon as you drive it off the lot, it depreciates, man. So it just, there's nothing wrong to have something nice. So I got a nice car. So, but I'm not gonna brag on myself, but I have a nice car. But that doesn't define who I am. All right. So it's stuff I can have, other stuff that's real nice, but I chose to do this, and to me, this is more important, more rewarding. So this is a good book. The Yamasse Indians from Florida to South Carolina. It's one of the more academic books, but it's a good book to read, and it breaks down what the Yamasse was dealing with, what they were going through, and during their terrain in the southeast. And you remember that area was known as East and West Florida. So, West Florida went all the way to Louisiana. I have a book that talks about that too. I'm gonna break that down. In fact, I'm gonna show you that real quick if I can find it. Hold on 1 second. I'll show you that real quick. Let me see if I can find that. I'm gonna give everybody these sources. You need these sources to learn and read. Find that doggone book. Man, I may not be able to find that one. East and West Florida. But I've been doing my researching hardcore, and this is just, I want to give you all the information you can. You can do your research on your own. So you need this. This should not be secretive. Just only a few people know this information. This should be to all of our people. I think this book here, out of this stack, yeah. This information needs to be good for all our people. So we really need to know this information. All right. Here's another book I'm going to eventually talk about. It's called The Concise Natural History of East and West Florida. Excuse me. You see two Negroes on there. One is a female, one is a male. I listened to something with Tariq Nasheed was on, and some Negroes attacking him, saying that the black people were chopping up images, claiming that they're Indian. We are the original Indians. But this is some coon Pan-African, man. I'm so tired of them, man. I really am. But here's a book right here that I'm going to talk about eventually. The Concise Natural History of East and West Florida. I'm showing you this. All right. These are obviously Aboriginal black people. And you show the plants. But I'm going to talk about that book eventually. But I'm just talking about this one right here. This is something that we need. This is the Yamasse Indians from Florida to South Carolina. But like I said, I'm going to eventually talk about this one here. I'm trying to look for my book dealing with the Etruscans. All right, it's somewhere around this house. But this is another book. And so when you hear Negroes claiming that we're stealing other people's history, we're rooting a false history, the original people of the Americas were black, period. That's not even up for debate no more. It actually should never been up for debate. The original people of the Americas were melanated, black, Moors, whatever the hell you want to use term you want to use, Hebrew, they were black. All right? They were here. Cushitic, descendants of some of the Egyptian Mandi, whatever. These are black people. We need to get out of that foolishness. And I want to eventually get detailed on how not only we sailed around the world, but some of us took wives from different nations and brought them here, and vice versa. So we was spread out. We weren't just situated in our own little enclave. We moved about, and not only we traded, sometimes we took wives from other countries. But this is something that's very important to me, because when I heard that idiot on Tariq Nasheed's, I guess, Twitter podcast on Pan-African saying that the Indians were just some dark-skinned people, they weren't black people, I thought that guy was really ignorant. He started talking about DNA. That's one of them stupid, ignorant Pan-Africans. Those are the ones I've been banging on, man. They are really ignorant, man. They are really ignorant. They're beyond stupid. And if we don't need to be listening to them buffoons, man, please do your research. I'm giving you information. I'm giving you sources. All right? Let's see it. This is a good book right here. All right? Get it? About $70. And this one I'm going to talk about eventually. All right? And you see two Negroes on cover, man. It's right in your face, man. I'm saying it's right in your face because it's obvious to me. But when you haven't really done the studying, it may not be obvious to you. But when you just look at the people, you can tell those are Negroes, man. And all you got to do also, you got to add up a timeline. And when you add up the timeline, you realize that if white folks went around here to around, 6,500 or less, okay, when people was around here 20,000 years ago, they could not have been white. They were black people. They could not have been these so-called Mongoloids, because they are a mixture of white and black. They are a mixture of that. So when they came over here, the original so-called Mongoloids were obviously darker skinned. But when them other ones came over here, they were mixed. And all you gotta do is look at the Philippines. You still see some black people there. Those are the original people of their land. Those other people are nothing but amalgamated, bleached out versions of the original blacks that were there. Because some of them may still carry certain full lips and certain noses, certain nose type structures. They've been bleached out. But the original black people are still there. Many of them are in what you call the forest or the jungle area. So it's just, information is out there. I got books on them too. Like I said, I've been studying this stuff since '87. Technically, really before that, but really intensely since '91. But like I said, this is a book dealing with the Yamasse Indians. I was reading it. I didn't want to read totally from my phone. I've been really reading it slow and everything, and that really bothers me. But we got to phase out these Negroes, man, who on this Pan-African stuff, man. The concept is good, because I love black people globally. Not the coons. But I love brothers and sisters globally who I'm willing to work with. Some brothers and sisters in France, some brothers and sisters in UK who know the truth. In Australia and Brazil who know the truth. But then you got these coons from these other countries, man. We can come in here, and they've been a very detriment to our people here, man. We don't need that. But I'm willing to work with brothers and sisters globally, because this is our history, but it's also the history over in Africa and Asia is also ours, but this history over here is also theirs too. And I really want us to wake up, man. We should do this collectively. Us studying our history here collectively. Every black person should learn about the Americas, man, because the black empires of America has been the most suppressed. And ask yourself why. Why has been so most suppressed? Because it was the damn greatest, man. I got more on this, and I just don't want to read the whole damn chapter to you. There's some other stuff that's emphasized in this book that's pretty good, but I just want to read that chapter that's talking to you about their interaction with the Spanish and the English. And so I'm going to end it right here with this book again. I'm sure to get the Yamasse Indians from Florida to South Carolina. It costs from around, like I said, around $70. And I'm going to eventually talk about this, the concise natural history of East and West Florida. All right, and you see two Negroes on the cover. So we're not making anything up. We're not pushing a fake agenda. We were here. I emphasize in my other posts, and I made 3 of them dealing with maps and showing the boats, our people using boats to sail through the river streams here in America. That's very important to emphasize that, because they're teaching you, that's telling you that they had the knowledge to sail, and they use ships, and they use wooden ships in many aspects. They use rope to tie together the wood. I'm not saying they use nails later on, but they had wooden ships where they use rope. All right, they use rope to keep it together. It's genius what they did, man. So, but a lot of these Negro scholars are not going to teach you this, because most of them are so goddamn ignorant, man. They already been indoctrinated, they already been brainwashed, and they're doing what white folks tell them to do. They don't know, most of them. Some are afraid to even want to know. This is going to mess up their tenure at the university. Trust me, I know all about this. So these Negroes will not tell you the truth. And even at these HBCU schools, they're sellouts. And unfortunately, we send our kids to these schools and they get in debt for thousands of dollars to be miseducated, man. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't go to college. I graduated from college. I got my degrees. But still, to me, you don't need to go to college to be a millionaire. And unfortunately, man, these institutions have gotten really worse, and really dumbing down our people, man. So I'm just information I'm giving you. Anyone who tells you that black Americans are denying their quote African heritage by saying they are the true Americans, the Aboriginal Americans, they can go kick rocks, or just go somewhere, man. Go kick rocks.